Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Hazelhurst Arts Centre. My name is Sebastian Goldspink, and I'm proud to be the director of Hazelhurst, and welcome along to New South, which is our newest exhibition, an exhibition that focuses on recent painting from Southern Australia, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Before we commence, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and waters in which we meet, the Dharawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, always here, always will be, particularly in this week as we go into NAIDOC week. We had a wonderful welcome to country last night with the official opening of this exhibition from Auntie Lola Ryan from the La Perouse Land Council, and it was fantastic to sort of take that moment to hear from Auntie Lola and to gather here in this beautiful and important country. We've got a whole series of artist talks today here in the Hazelhurst Gallery, and then afterwards we'll be decamping to the Broadhurst Gallery, just across the other side of the building. So as I said, this is New South, and then we also have our exhibition Painter Teacher, which looks at all our painting teachers here at Hazelhurst and their work, and we'll be hearing from them all today. So it's a big day of talks. The kind of format is going to be myself in conversation with each of the artists, and it's going to be, I think, very, very conversational. And at the end, we'll take a little moment to see if anyone has any burning questions. But besides that, thank you so much for coming along. These talks today are facilitated by the Friends of Hazelhurst and also Eckersley's Art and Craft, one of our major sponsors. Friends of Hazelhurst are an incredibly important organisation. They're the group of people that gathered together some 30 years ago to ensure that this gift, this land and the buildings was used for cultural purposes here in the Southern Shire. There was some talk about turning it into a sporting field, and I'm glad that it didn't. It didn't happen. And next year, Hazelhurst celebrates our 25th anniversary, and so we've got a whole bunch planned for that. If you're not a friend of Hazelhurst and you're interested, there is information at the front desk about becoming a friend and being involved in all of their incredible activities. But they're an amazing group of people and absolutely sit at the heart of Hazelhurst. So there's 28 artists in this exhibition, hailing from all different kind of regions in this kind of non-defined kind of area of Southern Australia. So we've got artists from Melbourne, we've got artists from Perth, we've got artists from Adelaide, from the APY lands, from Sydney, all over the place, kind of united by this kind of love of painting. And that's something that we're going to talk about is this idea of love and the love of the medium of painting. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Oliver Watts. Oliver Watts is an incredible Renaissance man, a man who sort of excels in a lot of different fields. He's a bon vivant, he's a lecturer, he is a really amazing commentator on kind of art in general and the history of art, a curator, a writer, but I think above all a painter. Nice. And we stand here in front of his incredible work, and I thought I would take the opportunity to have a chat with Ollie and find out a little bit more about both himself and the work. So let's start off with the man himself. Welcome, Ollie. And how about a quick round of applause for Oliver Watts?
Thanks everyone for coming. I can't believe there's so many people. So
yeah.
That's great to see everyone.
I'm nervous standing next to Ollie because he's disarmingly handsome. So yeah.
And a bon vivant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bon vivant. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, maybe let's start there, Ollie. So let's talk about when you were younger. And sort of how you came to this decision of wanting to be a painter, right? Like there's lots of mediums. What was it about painting that attracted you?
I mean, well, I don't know. What I was just going to say is that when I'm in this room, I see so many of my friends here. And I don't know, I think it's not just about painting, but like, you know, like it does really feel like a strong community of artists that, you know, whether they're living in Sydney or outside of Sydney, like we always come together at some point, whether it's in Melbourne, you know, wherever it is in Australia. But yeah, a lot of these practices I know really well. Some I don't know, but like some people, like well, Tony's here. Some people that that you have really admired as when I was younger and sort of looked at their work a lot, and then some people that like we've been able to nurture a little bit as well. But I think that's what I really like about painting, is that just it is such a strong community of friends and colleagues that we sort of draw inspiration off each other, and I think that it is really a life choice, really, in terms of this is my community, my friends, my church, my everything, really, and like the way that we respond to each other. So, for example, like being next to Karen Black, just seeing that it's right there. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but I mean, I remember the show that was in, and I remember exactly where it was in the show. I remember turning the corner and seeing that work for the first time, and I remember really loving this painting by Karen. In the whole show, that was my favourite work. And so, like, to have it next to my work in this show is really, a great thing. To see it again and to see it together with my work is a great thrill. But yeah, like, we've got such a strong relationship to other people's paintings and to other people's practice. I don't know if that answers your question, but like, we're always looking at I'm just looking at the brushstrokes on Karen's. Like that she's obviously used a bad brush maybe, or a dry brush, like to get those lines in that area, and then there's some more controlled areas. But yeah, like we're always drawing off each other.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing to say, is that this sort of idea of community and of pain is something that's very important to this show. And I always say, like, I'm kind of as interested in artists as I am in art. I'm as interested in the people making the works as much as I am in the work itself. And you'll notice throughout the show there's lots of panels, and wherever possible we've sort of got statements from the artists about why they painted this particular work. And one thing I said to the coming a little closer. Yeah. One thing I said to the artist was, I'm really interested in showing a work that has some meaning to you, some significance to you. Not necessarily their most significant work or their most expensive work or anything like that, but something that was important to them. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good segue into talk about this work, this really kind of iconic work from I guess like about sort of 3 years ago, or about 3 years ago, and it's a painting once again that is rooted in friendship, in your friendship with Ben Storia. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the painting came about and the idea for making this particular painting?
Well, it showed during COVID, so that was why I was happy for it to have a second viewing, really. I remember when this show opened, I think Jasper might have been there. It showed at Chalk Horse Gallery, but I think I don't even know if Jasper was there. It was one of those COVID things where you're the only person in the room. And like I'd been working on the show, I don't know, for like 9 months or whatever, and then to have that, it was still the date and it was still going to happen, and then it wasn't going to happen. Remember, it's so quick to forget that stuff. I've been watching Made in Chelsea, that was set in the COVID period, and it is quite interesting to see all the masks and things again. But so the idea originally for this work was an interest in... the show was called The Retreat, and it was about how rich people can buy silence. So this is the Qantas first class lounge at the airport. It's the massage. Yeah, first class people get a massage before their flight. So anyway, my idea was, and so whereas we're at the McDonald's and the beers are 12, so some people have a different experience. And then I think I had a yacht, and I had I can't remember, there was the Qantas lounge. There was maybe a yacht club, I think. Private gardens, secret gardens. Yeah, there was a Tetsuya's garden, I think. And so that was the original impetus for the show. But then when the show opened in COVID, all of a sudden an empty airport had a very different vibe. So there's a pendant piece to this painting because they hung together, which is the same scene but without the figure. So it was a very empty sort of airport massage lounge. So in the context of COVID, yeah, it felt like a very different painting, which I mean, I guess is a difference, another story, which is sometimes the intention of the artist, like the painting has its own life. But like Karen, I think, and a few of the other painters, well, like Kansas definitely, where there's an interest in some sort of neo-Baroque. So I think maybe Kansas and I are the closest in terms of always mining Fragonard and Watteau. And so the other thing with this, even in the colour palette, I see it in Karen's, I don't know. Well, Karen does talk to opera and, you know, a lot of her stuff would be set in the 17th and 18th century as maybe a literary basis, but the colouring of it is very sort of the Baroque. So the pink and the sort of light green. So that was sort of my updating of a Fragonard or a Watteau, which is sort of where are the artificial gardens? Where are the secret gardens? And I was thinking of this artificial green wall that Mark Newson designed for Qantas Massage Lounge was sort of our version of these secret, expensive, private gardens. So that's where that came out. And then, so I didn't get to it was in the COVID, you know, like I didn't get to the first class lounge. So this isn't an amalgam image, and Ben posed in his own garden. And I had the angle of the chair and he sort of had to do that. But I think it is based on a Fragonard which is called the Nymph. It's on the and it's got the same arm down, and it's a woman in the original. So he was a pretty good sport.
Yeah, was he worried? Was he worried about posing naked for you?
I don't think so. I mean, he did. No, he wasn't. I mean, I think he finds this painting quite interesting, like weird. I mean, well, not weird, but he loves it. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to have of yourself, a full life-size nude like that.
Yeah,
and it's very much him. Whereas, you know, like, I mean, again, Kansas works with portraits as well, whereas Karen, you know, sort of effaces the figures a bit more. But, yeah, I mean, I would say I can understand your question now, yeah. Often my paintings are based in portraiture, so that you can come down the line of friendship and stuff.
And they are rooted in friendship, and those friends who become subjects for your portraits sort of become characters in your work because you paint them multiple times.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. From Ollie's gallery, Chalk Horse L, who works at Chalk Horse, is often portrayed in the paintings, and she has the kind of weird experience of being in the gallery with people coming in to look at the paintings, and she's sitting there, you know, and people are like, "Is that you?"
That's true. Yeah. I guess that's the sort of experience of it, yeah. But yeah, so I don't know what this... we've never quite worked it out, but in my mind, Ben is a stand-in for me. And so I don't totally... Like, I guess I don't know exactly what it means. I'm not going to go into that, really. But, but it's the same sort of... I don't know. This, you know, he's got a beard. You know, it's just the same physiognomy and the same sort of, I don't know, feeling somehow.
And these kind of spaces, these kind of private spaces, do you aspire to those spaces? Do you covet those spaces? Or do you not want to be a member of any club that would have you as a member?
Yeah, no, I guess I rail against the things that I want. I like that line from... What is that from? The Webster play.
Okay,
But I think there's probably a bit of that. So yeah, no, to answer that more seriously, I was thinking about that on the way up, is that on one hand, I think there is that satire. So like I've already lent in, that was the retreat and that was the basis of the work. But on the other hand, I do think that I am interested in just straight up beauty or, you know, love or calmness or kindness or care, you know, a sense of care, like in, you know, this, in the idea of a massage room or a garden or something private or intimate. So yeah, on the other hand, I am interested in those things just on their own terms.
In talking about portraiture, is something that, you know, will come up, I guess, in this show a lot. There's a lot of artists, as luck would have it, in this show that are finalists in the current Archibald, and a lot of people are going to see their Archibald at the moment. And it is an interesting thing because that particular prize is really like the greatest kind of focus around painting, you know, in Australia, and there's people who have no real kind of interest in exhibitions, you know, but who are like, oh, the Archibald, you know, we have a winner in Tony here, do you want to talk about your experience of you know, sort of showing in the Archibald alongside many of your friends as well, right? And this idea of portraiture en masse and the sort of the kind of pressure around that and how you feel, sort of being involved in that.
Well, I think maybe for me often, I mean, this year is slightly different, but in other years they have just been works that I've already done, so that it's already in just that logic that that you're talking about, which is I'm constantly painting friends and constantly just trying different backgrounds and you know, just throwing things around. But yeah, the Archibald, I guess you're very aware that the Archibald is more public, and so that the paintings have to be readable in a certain way. But again, my work from last year was not like that. It was definitely part of a show. It was very similar sort of feeling, like basing on like a Watteau sort of fête galante or like just a picnic scene. It wasn't particularly portraity, and there was no celebrity in it unless you count me. I
always count you as a celebrity.
In fact, I painted myself 2 years ago, like very middle-aged and very decrepit, really.
Yeah.
And also a little bit creepy, sort of like coming out of the water a little bit from behind from the other figures. Had I known it was going to be in the Archibald, I probably would have painted it a little bit differently. I mean, I didn't put it into the Archibald. I mean, I did enter it, but I didn't think that it was a worthy finalist necessarily.
It is funny because that is an opportunity, I guess, to sort of, they're kind of cheap enhancements, you know. Like I had a friend who showed me a portrait that like a self-portrait that she'd done of herself nude, and she's like, "What do you think?" And I'm looking at it, and like without going into, you know, like her breasts were like enormous, you know, like, and I was like, you know, and she's like, well, you may as well, you know.
Well, I have had that happen. I've had a portrait painted where I had to go back to the portrait 3 times. So like the person would sit with it for 6 months and then go, I think the lips were a bit thin, or I think my eyes could be a little bit more open. And it's that question. And then it became so ludicrous in a way that I became this sort of virtual plastic surgeon that I sort of just said yes to it. Which I think is part of my practice in a way as well, which is in terms of being a postmodern or contemporary artist, I am really open to the idea of commissions. Like if you are questioning that notion of the modernist genius author that has the vision and is the great man or whatever, I think that there is something interesting about going back to something from the 18th century or the 17th century where in a courtly way you're told what to paint and how to paint.
The Medicis.
And how that works. So I sort of went into that thinking, oh, that's sort of quite funny. And like the first time I took the painting back to the studio because I was being keen and I just wanted to do a good job. But then the second 2 times I said, well, I'll come to your mansion and do it. Just to sort of see. And I set out the paints in the living room and sometimes, like I don't do many portrait commissions like that. Like I usually am painting friends. But you do feel like the most expensive help that they have. Because sometimes you get called a few days before Christmas and things like that. It's like just to touch up the paintings. It was a very weird experience.
And interestingly, this year for the Archibald, of course, you chose a very interesting subject in John Ibrahim, the King's Cross identity, shall we say. Do you want to talk through what was the decision-making about choosing that particular subject? Because I suspect that for you, part of it is sort of playing with that idea of celebrity and importance. And
I think for that, it wasn't... See, this is the thing I was just thinking with this painting as well. I think all my paintings, on one hand, they're a bit stupid and they're paying out something. Like with this one, I'm thinking with the artificial garden that's supposed to represent Qantas and Australia. It's not really a very Australian landscape, that this artificial, international, global Australian designer, but an international globalist, you know. So that's sort of like the joke. But on the other hand, I do think it's quite beautiful. And it's immersive and calming, you know, and so it does function, even though you might be undermining it in another way. So I guess with the Ibrahim, that was an introduction to saying, although I take the Archibald very seriously, it is a very, and although they are trying to open it up to other states and it isn't a national prize, on the other hand, it's a very Sydney thing, I think, or maybe as a Sydney boy, you're always aware of it. You're taken there from the age of 5, you know, it's just always there. So I just thought if you're going to paint the courtly Sydney thing, like it's the greats of Sydney, then, you know, someone like John Ibrahim is part of that court.
He certainly is.
You know, and yeah, so some, you know, yeah. And so that's what I thought, just that I think of the Archibald like that. And so, yeah, I did understand that for some people it would be a bit more controversial. But yeah, no, and then Kellett Street and King's Cross, it's so I was thinking of Kenneth Slessor a little bit as well. Like, what would Kenneth Slessor approve? I thought he would. You know, like, I think there is that Sydney night that, you know, isn't imaged that much. I mean, I think Peter Kingston's imaged the night.
Yep.
You know, like, but, you know, like, I've been reading a bit of Kenneth Slessor, like, from the 20s and 30s. And
is everyone aware of Kenneth Slessor? So,
you know, like, that wrote Five Bells.
Australian poet. A lot of his poems set in King's Cross and that kind of grimy. Yeah.
So, yeah, very bohemian, sort of Potts Point, sort of, which used to be, yeah, like a subject of poetry and fiction more. And so I guess I was trying to reclaim that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, there's the lights of Kellett Street and the fruit bats in the trees. And then, yeah, John Ibrahim, you know, again, like with very big shoulders. Like, I don't know if I did it on purpose, but in the end, like, I was thinking about kingly portraits, like even a Henry VIII. Like, by the time, you know, like, yeah, when he came to terms with his physiognomy of, like, maybe it's just because I'm a little bit more slender, but, like, I thought his shoulders were huge, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But he's sort of...
And also based on who my friends are. But he did, you know, very big. And so, like, you know, like, yeah, it felt like a Henry VIII sort of portrait in the end, like a very, very big thing. But I did also even... There was 2 versions. So one version did have the hands like this. And there was a little bit of discussion about that. And it was considered maybe a little maybe a little bit more in action was the ways. Yeah, so yeah, there was a bit of a kingly sort of feeling there too, I think.
Got one more question for you, but I might actually just throw it just quickly to the audience to see if anyone might have any questions at all for Mr. Watts before I ask this final question.
Hi, good to see you.
We've talked about, or rather, you've talked about the vegetation and the subject, but could you just tell us a little bit about the abstraction on the floor and the tilt of it, how you tackled the overhead lights and that?
I mean, it's interesting that the other one, people were reading the top lighting as a monster. The eyes are a bit more like eyes, you know, like... But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's a Mark Newson massage parlour that's over-theatricalised already. So I thought that it was quite a good theme for something that was a bit neo-Baroque. But yeah, it's not a raked... In real life, it's not raked, obviously, but it does have a sense of depth because it's one of Mark Newson's curves, you know, that sort of suggests that the space is larger than it is, I guess is one of the things that he's doing. And then the greenery also, on one hand, I think, which is the play of paint as well, it comes to the surface and encloses, but also as a garden gives a bit of space somehow. But yeah, it's the pot plants on the thing. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was quite loosely painted. That's the underpaint. So like that's no layering at all. I mean, one of the things I would just say really briefly too, like obviously we may not have enough time to talk about it, but I am very aware of people that paint in acrylic. So like I have really committed to acrylic paint. So, you know, like I'm seeing that Tom Polo, that's acrylic and other water-based paints. And then, of course, like I just think as an Australian, when you have so many models of acrylic painting coming from Indigenous art as well, like I think I think Emily Coonawarri may be the best, acrylic painter in the world.
Yeah.
But there are other painters in acrylic too around the world. So like Merlin James is someone that comes to mind for me. And of course like Hockney in the 70s. So like I'm really aware of Hockney's work from the 70s and the way that they used acrylic. So I think the abstraction does come a lot from the use of acrylic. Like acrylic works in a certain way. Some of it's a little bit transparent or... Yeah, so and you can see, like acrylic does what it wants to do, so you can see it in Tom's work as well.
Question down the front here.
Are you trying to get a flat look?
Well, acrylic has a flat look.
In terms of the no gloss.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've also committed to that. So I did experiment with like gloss mediums and things like that, but a long time ago now, yeah. So I find that the that chalkiness that comes out of the fact that acrylic does have a lot of white paint in it as opposed to oil that might be a little bit more, though, Tom does get some very vibrant pigments. And like, Joe Furlonger finds the acrylic too white, so he makes his own pigments. So some people counter it that way. But yeah, I lean into the chalkiness because often I find that suits the Australian landscape or the Australian light or, yeah, I like the haziness of it. But also I think I am very British in that way. Like I think a lot of my antecedents are probably British painting that might end up with, Hockney from the 70s, but my paintings are pretty grey. Like they're always a bit blue. Like that's, like this one's actually quite, pink and green, but yeah, the colour palette that I use is often like what I'm wearing.
and it's a relatively consistent palette,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things about Ollie's work, I can always see them even in the distance. Like I know the palette before even the line. It's just the thing. That is very kind of consistent with your work, and I think some of it does reference the sort of the bush of Australia, and and the colours of those greys and that haziness, that kind of eucalypt kind of haze.
Or even like a kookaburra. I mean, I don't know. I think like if you think of a kookaburra, it's like the browns and that bright blue maybe, but yeah. Like I think I'm playing. So like there's always like I think in my work that's getting stronger maybe is an interplay between Australianness and some sort of international. Like just what does that mean? And to be honest, that's why I'm playing with Mark Newson. So my next show in Melbourne in August, like I've actually painted the Lockheed Lounge. So I'm really doubling down on Mark Newson.
Yeah. So just for people who are not familiar, so Mark Newson's an Australian designer,
but he hasn't been in Australia for a long time.
Long time, yeah. And he famously made this Lockheed Lounge, which is in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. It was very famously used in a Madonna film clip, and it's made out of aircraft aluminium, cobbled together. And interestingly, it was originally for sale in Sydney at an exhibition for $8,000.
Yeah.
And it's now valued at
$15 million.
$15 million.
Yeah. So arguably, so like my thought is really in a way that's one of the most important Australian artworks made.
It really is.
But we don't really think about it as an Australian. And the thing was that it was made in a surf shop. Like surfboard maker, he made it in the shop in Manly or near Manly.
Yeah.
And so I'm returning the Lockheed Lounge to Manly. And so this thing that had this international life. And I do feel that here with like the Qantas Lounge is that perfect, always in flow. It's a nowhere place, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think Ollie and I could probably speak for the next 19 to 24 hours.
Yeah.
So we might move on to the next talk. But before we do, please join me in thanking the incredible Oliver Watts.
Thank you very much.